born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. My father was a Methodist minister as well, um, and my grandfather was a presiding elder in the old Arkansas-Oklahoma Conference in the old Central jurisdiction.
Um, so it sounds like you kind of have like a family tradition of pastoral leadership.
Very strong. Well, leadership, we tried.
Um, what led you to take that role for yourself as well? Like your family did it. Was it more of that kind of thing, or what experience kind of jump-started your life in ministry?
Um, with my father being in ministry, but also on my mother's side, my grandfather on my mother's side was the lay leader for the Kentucky Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so they met at Philander Smith College, one of our black college fund schools. And so they were basically, you know, one's father was a preacher, another was a leader in the church, and that's kind of where they met. So with Philander Smith College, along with the life of the church, that was a tremendous part of my life. I remember, times where bishops changed, and maybe there was a reception. One of the worst scoldings I ever got from my mom was when she started making um, melon balls,
Mm-hmm.
and I would run and try to get one, and she would say, "No, that's for the bishop." So it's been, I mean, the church and Philander Smith College has been so entrenched in my life. Another key component to my life has been Camp Tanaco and camping ministries. Um, Being a person whose sister was also a part of conference youth events, going to Camp Tanaco was always a highlight of my life and for my parents because they would give them a week away for me. And so with that, I was blessed to engage so many clergy that have now gone on to be with the Lord, but various clergy that are still very active in the life of the church, um, and being able to experience them and some of their just the excitement conversations. Uh, we had a powerful worship service when I was 16 years old, and a few of us accepted a call to preach out of that experience at Camp Tanaco. So,
I know Tanaco's. I've had a lot of friends that have had really good experiences at Tanaco. I never knew that. We've known each other for a while now.
yes, yes, and that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to is to not necessarily nothing has stopped me as a superintendent, but having an opportunity to go to Camp Tanaco. I've done a lot of preaching uh, at Camp Tanaco before, and that's been a glorious opportunity to meet new clergy. So I've got old school experience, but then also seen a new crop of great leaders come forth.
So, kind of springboarding off of that, what do you feel like are some of your best successes in ministry?
Okay. I would have to say rarely, if any place that I've been appointed to, um, rarely, if any, have they ever experienced a decline under my leadership.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I've grown everywhere, but what I'm really thankful for as I look back on that is that I have never really been in a situation where churches have declined under my leadership. But another great success um, that I'm thankful for is when I left Arkansas um, because Natasha was going to St. Paul. Um, there was an opportunity for me to serve in Kansas, and so in serving it in Kansas, I was appointed to Rossville, Kansas, but I was really kicking and screaming in the process. I thought for sure. Um, my mind was set on something else, either in Kansas City or something in Northwest Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
But I was focused on being in a black church. And so, in the process with going to Rossville, a town of about 1,000 people. They only had 4 black people, so with my family, we doubled the black population. But all of the worries, all of the things that I was concerned about, not saying that I didn't experience racism, but there was a place of significant growth. And serving in Benton as the associate, I started to see that my calling um, um, was expanded. That my calling was to build the church, and I never thought I could do that.
Wow.
You never know. You don't say no to God because you know I believe that God is able to kind of equip, because what God calls us to do, God also gives us the equipping. So that was a great success that I learned the hard way.
Yeah. You mentioned Tasha went to St. Paul, but do you want to talk about your seminary experience very much? You mentioned Philander.
Yes, I went from Philander directly to St. Paul School of Theology.
Okay.
My father completed course of study there, and so I kind of was staying within the family tradition. Um, what I learned is that just because you can breeze through undergrad, it does not mean you can breeze through seminary. And so there were some skills and some things that I'm thankful that I eventually just got.
Yeah.
But it took a lot longer, probably, than it was supposed to be, because
What would you want to name any of those skills? Or like,
I would say actually theological reflection, um, being able to read, um, and then be able to go deeper in the reading. Or I was always focused on, what does this have to do with the local church? What does this have to do with the local church? But there was something in the theological reflection that then in turn gives you skill for the local church.
yeah.
And so I was resisting and fighting all these different things. But also, it was my first time outside of Little Rock. And Kansas City is a nice place. So I've spent a little more time exploring the city instead of exploring the seminary, which I was called to do. Yeah.
I can totally understand that. I think like there's definitely a level of you got to go deeper before you can figure out how to apply it back to the church for that point.
And I had an appointment. I was able to, pastoring a local church was never an issue, never a point of strain. And I was blessed to be one of the students to serve in Kansas City at the time. But I'm thankful for my experience at St. Paul. I'm thankful. It was purely out of family tradition, but I discovered so much more about myself, and it pushed me in ways to make me a better pastor.
Did you mention what you studied at Philander?
Oh, philosophy of religion.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I served my first church my junior year
Really?
at Philander Smith College.
Really? What church was
Yes,
it?
I was appointed to St. James Lone Oak beginning my junior year, and so I served there while in college. And so I was a philosophy of religion major because I had intentions on doing something uh, in the church. Um, but since my call at Tannico, I really felt it was called to license and ordain ministry. And so I thought that philosophy, religion, again, was very helpful in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, God bless his soul, my major professor, Dr. James Rush, was an elder from the New York Annual Conference. But some of the things that he taught me about world religions, and just the philosophical perspective really enhanced my understanding of the church, the ecclesiology,
Yeah.
and where we kind of fall and how our faith is shaped um, by the process of theology, and how it is even shaped by some of the things that we may even hear or experience in other religions. So I was able to glean a lot.
Yeah. Sounds like a really good experience. What were some moments where your faith was challenged, and how did you respond to that?
Um, I would definitely have to say that while in seminary,
Mhm.
my faith was challenged because, while at Philander, um, just to be completely honest, you have a unique bag of tricks when you understand, when you start to live and embody Philander was home for me.
Yeah.
But going to St. Paul, um, it became my home. But a struggle in faith was that why is what I did at Philander not working at St. Paul?
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things that yes, I was personable enough. I had the interpersonal skills to be able to be in ministry and be in ministry well. But it was a struggle of faith that the old tricks of the trade did not work anymore, and that I had to learn how to be Mark in a new way. That I had to be challenged to say, you need to take some time away from school. That was one of the crises of faith that I had at St. Paul. But then I had another crisis of faith as I was seeking ordination in the Arkansas Annual Conference. I think one of the key things is that because it took so long to complete seminary, that made my clock ticking as it related to ordination. And so within that, I received some questions that at the time I did not appreciate at all. But it was during the ordination process that I was challenged to 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 think and pray about being in ministry, not to live out my father's legacy, but to be in ministry because of the calling that Jesus has on my life. And so, I mean, both things can kind of are strangely different,
Yeah.
and it kind of helped me to see, like this great jazz song, "Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that has their own." That challenge, where I was asked, "Are you sure you're not going into ministry just because your father was?" really woke up something and stirred up something, not initially out of anger and frustration, but as I continued to wrestle with the question, it was a question I had to overcome and answer if I was ever going to be effective in ministry. So,
And obviously, you've come to a good answer to that question because you've been effective in ministry.
yep, and you have to ask yourself that over and over again. Some traditions know the day and hour in which you're saved, and it was on a Monday or a Tuesday. But what I love about Mr. Wesley and our Methodists is that we're constantly being saved. That this faith walk is a journey. So there are some times that I've had to say, especially some of the work I've been able to do with family systems, is that I have to be able to see and look back and say, am I doing this out of my authentic self, or am I living out a family legacy? So that's been a continuous journey that I appreciate. What I do has to be Christ-centered. It has to be out of being a disciple and seeking um, to make disciples. And that's something that I've just learned, just that I constantly learn, battle with, but I always go back to that same place. I think about one of the many times Jesus, as he was resurrected, reappeared. Um, he came, saw the disciples fishing, and when he appeared on the seashore, he said, "Children, have you any meat?" Now that's an old King James version, still, and so it always makes me mindful. If it's not about making disciples, if it's not about drawing people closer to Christ, and as I talk about, drawing people closer to Christ, it's not, beating people with the Bible or telling them that's wrong, but it's like I think that we make disciples by being the embodiment of the same unconditional love and grace that Jesus poured out on the disciples of the church. And especially now we have to embody that. It's what I'm experiencing more and more is that if there's no love in it, it's very difficult to be a part of. So, but yeah, I think it's a constant constant journey. Um, I think, being blessed to be on the delegation and seeing the connectional life of the church, that's kind of been my latest disappointment. The interesting thing about the connectional work of the church is that I had to discover that I was actually seeing how the sausage was made. And just because it was a different level of seeing the church,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't guarantee that it would be closer to God.
Yeah.
So I kind of was still naive in my 40s and thought, oh, okay, I'm going to get a chance to see the global church at work. And it's not always godly. So, this is how I've learned to be a lifelong learner, because it's just what you think you're going to learn is not. But there's a lesson there. So it's just a blessing to be able to see it, because I hope and pray that in some strange way we can work to make a difference. We're going to be different, but there's a difference in being different and making a difference. So that's my hope. We're going to be different. We may split, but I want to make my purpose is making a difference.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were on the delegation general conference.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to kind of talk through some of your offices held, both with the annual conference, jurisdiction, the general
Mm-hmm.
conference,
Mm-hmm.
that widespread spread?
Yes, well, being who I am, I've never met a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
So general conference was a time for me to meet new people and engage new people. It was an opportunity from the very beginning, especially when you're the lead clergy and lay delegates. You get a whole bunch of information. You get a whole bunch of opportunities to have lunch, and I know us delegates need to eat, going back and forth. So you're a part of many different things. And so in my first year, was in Portland, 2016. Because I was the lead clergy delegate, that placed me in a gathering with all lead delegates, clergy and lay, over the episcopacy committee. So in the discipline, there's a little paragraph about the interjurisdictional episcopacy committee. And so in going to that meeting and, just from navigating things with so many others, I was elected secretary of that interjurisdictional episcopacy committee. And so then when we go to jurisdictional conference and we do election of bishops, there's also a transition from Episcopal committees now. As many people know, in Arkansas, Rodney Steele and Asa Whitaker have been those heads, clergy and lay heads for years. And so then after the assignments were completed, we met as a new episcopacy committee, and I was elected as secretary, and now I'm kind of on that executive team. So with the call session of General Conference, I was able to go to St. Louis and be a part of that as well. And so to be able to help navigate how delegates get on and off the floor, passing along information, that was something that I did, and that Karen Mann is doing so well now. So with those two teams, particularly the work within the Episcopacy Committee, I was then asked to be on a task force because it seems as though we have to do some shifting when it comes to the role of bishop. And we were talking about the Episcopal Fund, and we were making just various plans that we submit to the College of Bishops. So I've really been able to be blessed to be a part of some of that work, and it is not simple at all. It is not simple at all. But I wouldn't give anything for it. It's been trying on my soul, but I consider it an honor to be able to work and be able to express my voice, to be that voice of diversity within our jurisdiction. I mean, we have never elected an African American woman in the South Central jurisdiction. We have never elected a Native American. We've never had more than 2 or 3 Hispanics. So I'm to be able to be a voice of diversity, to to make sure we have, um, more than enough voices at the table is something that's still very important to me. And so to be able to be that voice and be able to articulate that and work with people and work with others, it's been an extreme blessing.
What are some mistakes that you feel like you've made in your career, and what are the lessons you've learned from them?
I'm going to quote the words of my mother on this one. She said, "Now, Mark, I'm going to give you a sheet of paper, and I want you to put this in your wallet. I'm gonna write something, and I want you to keep it in your wallet so that you can. I want you to keep this in your wallet so you can pull it out." And so she said, she wrote on a sheet of paper, "No." The mistake, one of the many mistakes that I've made, is that I have not said no enough. And so instead of making time to do the essential work that's always needed, I will go off on a tangent on things that I should have said no to.
Yeah.
And so I would say time management has been a regret in the past, but I think I'm doing a little better than that with that. I think another mistake that I've made is that I don't take enough time to appreciate the quiet. I am a person of music and noise, but that deters. I think another mistake that I have made is that I have not always been intentional about lay and clergy partnership in the life of the church. I've been a lone ranger, and people have oftentimes liked me enough or liked what I've done to go along with it, but really creating that path um, together. I think another mistake that I've made as well is that there were a lot of times that I, I was not in partnership with my wife. That you know I would do things that I felt was best instead of being the partnership that's necessary um, in ministry, but definitely for clergy couples as well. Um, so one last thing is not only no, not only listening, but sometimes I just need to shut up. Every time somebody talks to you, they're not looking for a solution. Some people just need presence, and just you need to be able to offer that with grace. The list goes on and on. So I will just stop it with those things right there. I mean, I've eaten too much. I don't walk enough. I don't appreciate the outside as much as so. Yeah.
What are, if you were to like just name some experience and feelings that you've had during the pandemic? Church has obviously changed. For several months, we couldn't go in the building, or we were telling people not to go in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And we're losing people at a different rate. People are getting sick differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's turned into a political event.
Yes.
So, what were your thoughts and feelings and experiences from this part of the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, to a certain degree, it's a political event. I would like to emphasize that at first. I'm so thankful for the churches of the Southeast District. Most of them have been very consistent with masks. And a lot of times I've heard so much about, oh, I can't wait to go back to normal. I can't wait to go back to normal. But what we're learning, since it's such an extended period, is that we have to develop. I used to say we need to develop a new normal, but we need to understand there is no normal at all. Ixnay on the ormalnay, because there is no normal. I think. Yeah, I think being able to navigate that. But I would have to say that still some of the greatest disappointments about this is there are some people that just did not close, and there are still some churches in the body of Christ that refuse to wear masks. And there are people in the body of Christ who will refuse to be vaccinated. Um, but but out of this, um, I guess I'm starting to preach. But out of this, I really hope that we can be a church that has a different spirit about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds weird, but I hope that we can someday be a church of the masked and the unmasked, the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated. Because I think the greatest tool of the devil
Mm-hmm.
is trying to disrupt community with schism.
Yeah.
And so if we're able to find, if we're going to make this pandemic another thing that divides us or keeps us from going to church, keeps us from being disciples of Jesus Christ, the only person that will win will be the devil.
Yeah.
Now, we're a long way from it, but just in the back of my mind with this COVID situation, we can't be so frustrated with individuals that don't want to wear masks that we shoo them
Yeah.
or that we ignore them. I mean, 36 feet is enough distance to be away from them, but also we should not be so driven by not wanting to be vaccinating and not wearing masks that we look strangely at those that do. We can't condemn each other. This pandemic has had has a tremendous effect on us. And coming out on the other side of that, we have to continue to be accepting and loving of each other. Otherwise, this will go on a list of many other things that have divided us, and the only one that gets the glory out of division is the enemy. So this went from an interview into a sermon. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm really passionate
Yeah.
about that, and that's kind of one of the things I'm really looking at in a local church. How can you be a church that's for all, and how do you embody that? Not only as it relates to diversity, how do you embody that in every way?
You know, the Methodist Church kind of has a weird situation where most of our churches are purple.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a true like one side or the other in any church, I've learned.
Right.
Do you think, with that being the case of how diverse Methodists are as people, that we're in a particularly unique position to show other people how to do that better? Or do we have a like uniqueness about us that helps?
I think the uniqueness about us is also historic. There was a time in the life of the church that we could disagree agreeably, particularly being a child of the annual conference. I remember seeing people fussing on the annual conference floor, but then walking together to go have lunch together. And somehow nowadays, in the Arkansas conference and maybe throughout the connection, instead of us arguing on the conference floor, on any conference floor, just and still being able to come together at the end, we've lost the experience to do that. And to be totally honest, I think that to some extent, we have allowed what happens in our world and the way that we are entrenched in our silos to become the life of the church.
Yeah.
I really think the calling of United Methodist, and one of the things that the polity and the legislation of the church has really kind of stirred up with us, is that we're not 50-50 on anything. And that was the Methodist way, I'm going to say at least the Methodist way in Arkansas.
Yeah.
But somehow we woke up and said, because I disagree with you, I don't need to have lunch with you. I need to have lunch with my silo.
Yeah.
And we need to be entrenched. I think we, as United Methodists, we have never been 50-50 or 100% on anything.
Yeah.
And so why now? is this diversity, this 60-40 church, a problem? Why is it that I have to hate somebody because they are the title progressive or conservative? There was a time in the United Methodist Church that we lived together, different, but yet still together. That's what we need to bring to the world. That's what we've been lacking. The United Methodist Church should be leading this country with work on racial justice. Should be the place to be to 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 be able to live out racial reconciliation. Because under the body of the United Methodist Church, we're a diverse church where all kind of people are able to be together. And we, as the church, need to start showing the world. We need to show the world. Because I'm going to just say the words of a retired bishop, Bishop Woody White. And it's really carried me throughout my life and ministry, and it's been a great help in doing cross-racial appointments. Bishop White said, "I don't have to hate vanilla in order to love chocolate." I don't have to hate vanilla in order to love chocolate. Now, that's not always easy. But if that's the goal, and you get a community of disciples that are committed to be different than how the world is reacting, that's a church that can really transform the world. And that's just my hope. I'm going to work for that. I'm going to work for it. As the old song says, while the blood is running warm in my veins, that's what I want to work to do.
If you had to name one major mentor in your life, who was it and why? Or if you need to do a couple, because I don't think I can.
I got to expand it to two. I would have to say Chester Jones and C.E. McAdoo. When I was a student at Philander, C.E. McAdoo was at Wesley Chapel. He was a part of the Student Christian Association that even when I wasn't there as faithfully as I should be, I knew that I was always one. And at a low part in my life, after my dad died, we were used to going to church wherever the bishop appointed us. And so the way Reverend Jones reached out to my family, we joined Hunter after my dad died, and Hunter was my home charge conference. The beauty of them and just so many others is they invested and imparted in me. I'm thankful for women like Reverend Maxine Allen that showed me that I don't have to take everything, that I can speak truth to power. And even though I still struggle to live that in, to have somebody in your life who constantly says, this is not right, and you know it. To have a peer like Ronnie Miller Yao that just is constantly attuned to the Spirit and the power therein, and shares that with me. To have a clergy wife who was able to tell me, I think you're called to do this, and I know you can do this. Yeah, I went from 2 to 5, but all of them have been a great influence in my life.
You've talked a lot, and you've shared a lot of wisdom today. What are some final parting words of wisdom you have for anyone who may listen to this or watch this or just want to know more?
Chad, I think the one parting word that I would say is that I've learned the hard way that you can't do this alone. I think of one of the great songs of the church that the UMW often does, bind us together with cords that are unbroken, bind us together in love. What I've learned in ministry, I can't do it alone. I need others. And if I'm going to go on this journey, I've got to journey with others and love others. I mean, I think there's a reason why Jesus sent the disciples 2 by 2, so that they would never know that they are alone on this journey and that they can work through this stuff together. So my parting words would just be, I've learned there's no way you can do it alone.